we have had this training before. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to blow over it, but I'm not going to dwell on some things. But if you have any questions in the interim, please interject then, so that at the end we, while it's on your mind and fresh, we'd love to review it. Okay. All right. So today we're going to review the performance review process, which we're in the middle of, how to prepare and conduct performance reviews. This is a recap. Assess and prepare necessary documentation. Does everybody have everything they need from last year in the files or anything like that from me that they need to? If you don't, email me and I'll get you what you need from the Dropbox. Okay. This year we are also going to be doing motivational performance goals, SMART goals, how to differentiate employee performance between your team, avoid discrimination charges. And of course, we always want to have some fun when we're dealing with our group or our team. That's the name of the game. The more fun we have, the more productive everyone is. So the real goal of performance review process is to stay connected with your employees and to motivate and engage them. And what that is we don't want to fill out the 3s and say, on this one, I gave you a 3, and on this one, I gave you a 4, and on this one, I gave you a 2. When we go over the numbers and we go over the reviews, what we want to do is explain to them why. That's why the boxes have some talking points there for you, so you don't have to remember everything. Even when you do a presentation like this, there's talking notes that I can see that you guys can't, just to keep me moving. So remember, it's not just a 3. Then don't say, well, that's self-explanatory. Some of them might be like attendance and stuff, because, since we don't really go to the office and things like that, that can be different. Unless, of course, they're calling out and they are having performance issues in their attendance. So then you have to talk about that. But this is really about having a conversation. Employees wait all year for a conversation on one-on-one just with you. So really take the time to have that dialogue. Question? Yes.
Well, actually, it's a question about what you said. Did you say hold questions to the end or ask?
Sure. You can ask.
Okay. You mentioned we're going to talk about the SMART goals.
Uh-huh.
Would it make sense to have a spot, maybe we do already, on the review sheet so they can put either we can put their SMART goals so it's on the doc, or they can put it on theirs so we have it?
Do you want me to send you a SMART goal that says specific, timely, measurable, so that they can have a goal and how they're going to address it? Would you like some handouts like that?
No, I mean, they should have that already. I was just looking for a spot. Again, like Wes said, in the past, doing these reviews I would have 3 different documents open. So I'm just trying to condense it and to make it as simple as possible. I mean, I can always add spots for it and just manually add them in.
That's a great point. And we should talk about that amongst the team, because last year, remember, we didn't do their goals until January because we were in such rush mode for this. What does everyone think about that?
Well, so a follow-up question. When you're saying going over the SMART goals, are you saying we're going to talk about the ones this year, the ones they're doing for next year, or both?
Both. You review the ones that they made last year and see how far along they are, if they've completed it, if they're halfway through, if they're a quarter through, if they need anything from us to get that completed, if it was a goal that they made that maybe they realized wasn't going to be as effective, or it wasn't measurable, or it was more tactical and not strategic.
Yep. I got that. So are we asking them in their review doc to give their new goals, or?
Well, that's what I'm asking, because last year we didn't do it until January.
Right.
I think I'd rather have them do it another time. And I say that only because I don't think we have some forms that we put together and, pulled off the internet, but I don't think everyone really understands goal setting that well. And we probably need to do a little more in helping people understand, because it's not just. Yeah.
I was agreeing with you. I think we can review the ones that they made for this year, but I think, like Pam said, for making new ones, I think that should be separate.
Okay, we could do it.
I think I agree too. Some things will come out of this. It'll be, they'll be like, hey, remember you did this. It'll be some natural follow-up. But I hate for people to think they have 2 big tasks to do all at once.
I agree. And didn't we talk about on one of the other leadership calls about getting, I think Laura brought it up, doing their SMART goals sooner so that we have a full year to let them accomplish them?
Mm-hmm. Well, if we did them in January, we could actually discuss this at the retreat. Or no, the part-time.
That might be a good thing to do. If you're going to talk, we were going to do something else, but maybe this would be a good time to go over what a SMART goal is and how, you have personal and professional goals, and they, how you can kind of write them up so that you can measure them and all the other things.
Well, it could relate to, we could talk about the company's goals, right? And then you can relate to that.
Yeah, Wes has to come up with brand new company goals for 2023.
Done that yet, but
they'll be the same.
Anyway, I think this would be more about how they learn to set their own goals, because I've seen various, iterations of goals, and they vary quite widely, so that might be a good thing to do. Let me look at our agenda and see, if there's a good place to fit that in. Otherwise, maybe we do it the week after we come back or something.
Okay. All right.
The only reason I'm bringing up is because I know, like, if we turned our SMART goals in last January and we are now in November, I know Laura brought it up on one of the leadership meetings, and then I know I will have a couple people say, well, I haven't had a full year to accomplish my SMART goals.
Okay.
And if we're talking about that on the review and saying, well, you didn't reach your SMART goals, they'll say, well, I only had 10 months to do it.
Okay. But you could just do a check-in, because we should be checking in on the goals at least.
Yes.
Okay.
But I mean, the SMART goals should have, at least as far as I'm understanding, should have nothing to do with their score on their review in any way.
Okay.
Or for example, what, if they're getting a promotion or an increase in salary, correct? The SMART goals are a way for them to grow personally and, a way to keep track of that. But I mean, up until now, we've never docked anyone for not completing a goal at the end of the year.
Okay.
Well, if they don't complete a goal, they should have a good reason. I don't know.
Go ahead.
Wes, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, what I would say is, in the past, it hasn't been all tied neatly together especially because of the timing, right? Because we're determining these things a lot before we've even gone through all this stuff. I think you're right to some extent, but some of them might be the above, what I call the above and beyond, or the personal, but others certainly tie into how we think they're doing, right? It almost depends on what the SMART goals are.
I mean, I can think of some people's goals, like a good one, it would be Laura has, her goal was to submit X number of award things, for the year or whatever it was. And she kept a, track of that. I mean, part of all of the goals are to feed into your performance evaluation. So, I mean, that's the reason you set them, is so that you can, you can grow and achieve, and grow your group or your team or what have you. So, they are tied together.
I don't see how they are. I mean, they haven't been in the past.
Well, but if Wes has goals and everyone gets picks goals and they want them to be goals and they don't achieve them, how is that successful to them or the organization? And then what is the repercussion from that?
Well, it could be a goal that they just didn't get around to achieve, but they're also doing well in every single one of these other categories we're rating them on.
But by the same token, they made a commitment to the goals, right?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's the whole picture. You're going to look at that and look at the goals, and you certainly don't want to ignore them if people are doing a good job and that's what they said and the key things. And hopefully, again, there are good reasons for missing things. Hey, the situation changed. We changed our focus, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. But I think I'd like to hear whether they feel they were successful or not, because if we don't hold them accountable to this year's goals, what makes us think that they're going to be accountable to next year's goals? And if we don't hold them accountable, will they take them as seriously as maybe we would like?
I think as soon as we start holding them accountable in that way, they're just going to start making easy goals, because no one wants to sit here and miss their goal. And then all of a sudden they're, held.
Well, but that's still a two-way street, because if they set an easy goal, it's for us to say, wait a minute, that's not much of a stretch. If Laura's goal was to for one award, we'd say, come on, Laura, you can do better than that.
Right.
But I'd just add, at other organizations that I've been with, your review, my review was based on my goals and my ability to meet them or not. So that's how we were judged on specifically meeting the goals or not meeting them. I'm not suggesting that that's the best way. And I think it's actually more fair to have like the review portion and the goals portion, but there's got to be some intertwining. And like my goals are tied to things that I wanted to do for the company to support our corporate goals. They're not just professional development goals for me to better myself and my career.
Correct. And
I
those goals were
understand
based
that.
on
Those reaching those goals would be obviously a bonus and a kudos to you for your review. But again, I think it doesn't make sense to mark someone negatively if they didn't get around to doing their goal versus performing well in all these other categories.
But
that's my opinion.
Our jobs as leaders was to have dialogues with them on at least a quarterly basis. That was the agreement, correct? On updating people on their goals. So anybody who didn't meet one, you should already be aware of that. Correct?
Sure. I mean, we were told, Pam brought it up and we reminded people to do their goals. But I mean, as long as we've done SMART goals, we haven't been able to keep track of it throughout the year. There's quite a lot of other things we're doing and worrying about.
All right. Well, this year we'll set it up to track them. We'll have meetings with them and you can send me the notes. We can put them in the files. And that way next year we're all clear on what the objective is. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, I think if there was some misunderstanding of what a goal was and how that tied into your performance, we need to clarify that. I know, we talk about our goals throughout the year and so, we'll see, okay, well, now now we've done this many proposals or if we've done this many awards or whatever it is, kind of knowing where they are meeting their goals. So if that's not what, we made apparent to everybody, then we need to make sure that everyone understands your goals tie into your performance, which ties into the strategic goals of the company. Which is why we set them. Otherwise, why set goals, right? If they don't mean anything,
then it's just a to-do list that you do or don't get to because it's convenient or not.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So are we all going then to review our goals with the people that we reviewed this year just to see where they stand?
I think we should. I mean, because I know a lot of people are aware of meeting their goals or needing to meet them and where they're supposed to be. So,
and are we diminishing the people who met their goals with the people who didn't? If you met your goals, that's a kudo. And if you didn't, why not? And does it have an ill effect? Because then the people who reached their goals were saying, well, that's great, but we're not going to really count that this year. How's that fair?
It's not. I mean, I was under the impression you make goals, you work to the goals, you're judged on whether you met your goals or not. And if you didn't have time to work on a goal, you give an explanation and, you say, I'd like to carry this goal over to the next year or something like that.
And then you give us a time frame on when you think it's going to be concluded. And should that goal take another year if it was only going to take a year this year?
Right.
And they need to be strategic goals, not tactical goals. Okay. All right. So the answer to that is goals are going to count a percentage then? Should they?
I think so. I mean, it's what people, it's what they've, since she spoke up, using Laura as the example, like that was what she was working towards, these different things that were part of her strategic growth plan, aligned with what we were doing as a company. And she ticked those things off. So,
it would be hard to say, okay, you've had these and you've made them all, but we don't think you did a good job. I mean, you may have another reason, but that would be a hard argument to make. On the other hand, again, things could have changed. Hopefully, if things change, people alert in the middle of the year and say, hey, this goal isn't going to work because, and there's a lot of reasons why things change.
And the dialogue has to be,
right. There's somebody may have done a tremendous amount of work, not gotten there, but we recognize, hey, it was a lot harder than we thought, but you made great progress or whatever. There's ways to take into account how people did.
Okay. All right. So goals as a percentage. Do we want to think of that? You guys each want to send me a ballot how many percentage points goals should have in the review system this year, or 25%, 10%, 50%?
I mean, I think they should count, like
it's just like the term paper at the end of the semester has weight.
Right, exactly. And I think there are a lot of goals I set that I met, but some meant I didn't. And there might be reasons for that. Mm-hmm. But I think it should weigh in because I was working towards those goals.
Okay. All right. Well, we can reformulate then the back sheet to include that. And since they don't have their goals back to me yet, we can do that this week and I'll get that to you. Wes, everyone think about what the percentage of the weight would be. All right. So just so does anybody enjoy conducting performance reviews? We should, because it's just another dialogue we have with our employees another time of the year. But HR says that people would rather have a root canal, some managers, than talk to their employees. And you have to question those supervisors who believe that, because it should just be one more conversation that we're having in the term of the day or the year. And how come? Because it's difficult to give negative feedback. As much as we enjoy working with our employees and as much as we enjoy the work we do and the work we do with them, sometimes somebody needs a coach. Somebody needs some negative feedback to improve the year for next year. So having the difficult conversation is hard. If anybody has an instance where they're having to give a difficult or negative feedback and you want some coaching, just give me a call. Because I know there's some people on the call that are having that right now and we're being coached through that, but I want you to come off professionally. I want them to take it professionally. I want them to appreciate the feedback that they're getting, and how they respond to that feedback is going to reflect on how great of a year you're going to have with that employee too. If they take it and say, I don't really care how you feel, I'm just going to move on with my day, or they say, oh, thank you for the feedback. And here, since you gave me that feedback, I've been thinking that I do need this kind of help with that. Can you help me with that? So never rule out the fact that they might come back and say, I've listened to what you said, and I believe that this is what I need to be successful. How can you help us? And I'm sure that we can work on that as a group, as an organization. Adjust your view. Performance reviews are a mutual opportunity for growth and learning. While you're with that employee, ask them some questions. What did you learn that was significant to me that I could pass on to the team this year? Or you can say, and this is what I've learned about our team this year, and I'd like your input. Performance reviews can and should be enjoyable. Like I tell you guys all the time, everybody knows exactly what kind of employee they are. It's what we manage that makes the difference. Employees know if they're a great employee or a mediocre employee or a bad employee. They're waiting for us to show up to the party and say, you know what, this is what we need to do now. So when you go into it, put a smile on your face and know that it can be enjoyable and it should be enjoyable. And if it's not, what is that telling you about that person or that review or that cycle? That means probably that they need some work, because when it's not enjoyable, there's work to be done. How do great managers measure performance? You have a profound influence. Every single day, you have a profound influence on your employees. This time of year, you even have a more profound influence because you have thorough and productive discussions about performance, accomplishments, goals. I'm going to add goals to this slide. Development and mutual needs. What do you need from them to be more successful? I know that, Ben, your team has... some of your PMs have gotten promotions and they took on special duties so that they didn't have to hire somebody else, but they're doing something that's above and beyond what the PM does. That's meeting your mutual needs. How is that going? Be thoughtful. Like I say all the time, just because you tell the truth doesn't mean your presentation doesn't need a lot of work. Be thoughtful in your timing. Don't make it a half an hour call. These reviews should take an hour. Don't rush them. If they don't, that's great. But if they take more than a half an hour or an hour, that's great too. Let the review proceed in the timeline that it's supposed to. We have no timeline. It's all about the comments, the conversation, the back and forth. Make that moment count. Like I said, in some organizations that I've worked for, the only time you ever get to spend with your employee is during the review process, and they're looking forward to that. Do you know, even as a consultant, I like to hear that I do good work, or I like to hear, you know what, that was great, but next time let's do this. I'm always coaching my employee because she desires that, because she wants to be better the next time. Because if I can help her with this instant, then the next time she sends that email, she knows she rocks, right? And speak to be understood. Just because you're talking doesn't mean that they're understanding what you're saying. And that's what happens when you go through the process too fast. And then when they're talking back to you, listen to understand. Remember in the communication training, are we forming our sentence before they're done speaking to us because we think we know what they're going to say? Let them shock you. Let them surprise you. Let them make your day and say something that can completely take you off guard, but can completely change your reality for that moment. So an hour minimum for these reviews. And if you're rushing through the reviews and all of your reviews take a half an hour, I'd really have to ask you to reevaluate what kind of dialogue you're really having. And is it the one that they are looking for? Make it matter. They're not just yes and no questions. That's why the open-ended questions in the back, and your reviews are going to have open-ended questions. They're going to have to be thoughtful too. I don't want to hear, do you think you're having a good year? Yes. Well, tell me why you think you're having a good year. Tell me what led to that success. Tell me how you got here. Tell me why. Be present in the moment. Don't be sitting on your computer, because these are all going to be virtual, looking down, doing this. Unless you're taking notes on the review, I don't expect you to be doing anything. Your desk should be completely clear. Your mind should be completely clear. You should be only focusing on what is happening to you in that very minute. Set the stage for success. What you say, like I said, just because you tell the truth doesn't mean your presentation doesn't need a whole lot of work. How you say it. I know that sometimes talking to Jen, she's like, well, how did you say that? Because I love that. Right? It is all about your presentation and how you behave. If you start to get an attitude, or they start to see you frown, or they start to see you and your body language starting to do something different, you are the person who is setting the expectation. I also recommend that you only do these reviews with cameras on for both parties, because then you can read their body language. You can see if they're feeling a little uncomfortable. Be honest. Radical candor. Be honest about your reviews. If you are having some trouble with somebody, just say, look, all of these other things. I'll give you a great example. When I was younger, before I had HR roles, I worked as an expediter in a pre-press department in a print shop. And I did a great job, but I was late all the time. But for the quarter I got, I could be late all the time, and I don't care, because my work spoke for itself. But nobody ever said, you know what, if you were late, you could get $1. So, so think about how you're being honest. It's real. That's too simplistic a thing for this. But by the same token, why weren't they honest with me to begin with? Keep your goals in mind, because your goals are going to change this year too. And what do you need from your employees to be successful? You need to be thinking of that, and who can do what, and looking at the job descriptions. I think the job descriptions are really how does everybody feel about their job descriptions, or your employees' job descriptions? They're all inclusive. They cover things. They state it in a way that makes it realistic, correct? You can go back and say, you know what, in your job description, says, and then of course at the bottom it says, and can be amended or modified for any reason. And we have the right to do that. So if I want to slide a new job description in, a new sentence in there, you can do that. But when you're saying, oh, and by the way, I want to add this to your job description, don't just say, oh, here's another duty I need to assign to you because somebody needs to do it. What you need to do is say, you know what, I've been evaluating the team, and this is what I need from someone. And based on your skill sets and what I see that you do, I think that this would be an excellent thing to add to your repertoire. How does that sound? Better than here, do this. Correct? Prepare thoroughly. Like I said, the meeting is extremely important to the employee. Everybody loves that money at the end, but don't think that this conversation isn't just as important, because the success of this conversation will help them to be even more productive next year. And that's the goal, for everybody to be upskilled, to be upgoaled, to be better than they were last year, to do different things, to expose them maybe to something different that they didn't know. So this is prepare thoroughly. And I tell you, the leadership who doesn't prepare thoroughly, sometimes the employee can turn that around and say, well, what do you mean? I've done this and this and this, and you never even mentioned it. And you don't want to be on the receiving end of that kind of a review, because it never goes well for the leader. Has everybody kept a file of kudos and other documents for the year? So that this year they can pull it out and say, oh, that's right. I tell you, not that I want to depend on all of the things that Wes goes through on the monthly meetings, and some of those kudos are great, but you can also say, you get kudos all the time over here, but this is kind of what I see over here. And you have to balance that out. I can't justify something because our clients love you, but you're not treating our internal customers well, or whatever the case may be. So I hope that you have your kudos and other documentation. I can think of one for Ben's team when Sarah did all of those reviews when you were on vacation. She really did a great job with that. That Excel spreadsheet was stunning. Jennifer's going to benefit from that Excel spreadsheet moving forward, because now that we're hiring somebody new, the people that we didn't hire for Ben's team, we might consider for this new role. So that would be a kudo just off the top of my head that I could talk about with Sarah for a minute. Goals of the review process. It's to evaluate the performance, to motivate the performance, to develop the performance, and to improve the performance. I don't know about you, but every single day I'm looking for ways that I can improve how I do things with my clients. So, even though I have 25 years and I think I'm pretty good at it. I mean, I was in a seminar yesterday all day to upskill. So, and how does that motivate me? If the clients are happier, I'm happier too, because then if I need a reference to get a new client, I'd probably get that, correct? And I'm developing myself. No one should ever stop developing themselves. And of course, to improve. And if there's nothing to improve, I think that you really have to ask yourself is, why aren't they after yours or Wes's job? They're that great. Why are they still with us? Because they love Wes and they love Rare Patient Voice. I know. But if they were that awesome, they could go somewhere else and make more money. So then we have to think about, then what are we doing strategically that's keeping them here? Well, we contributed to their HSAs. We rolled out the benefit hub. We're doing having the meeting in January. See how we're upskilling and developing and improving Rare Patient Voice this year?
Hey, Leanne, one point or thought I had here. As you say, we want to motivate, we want to develop. People can always improve. We're always looking for ways to do that. On the other hand, when you think of things that are related sometimes to people's, personalities, some of those aren't easily changed or don't change. And I think it's good to recognize that. And then not necessarily accept that, but look for, I call workarounds. Wait a minute. I had a guy, as an example, unrelated to us, a guy, he was a good sales guy. He would not fill out the forms. He would not turn in the right paper. I called him a formophobe. And he could say, well, he's got to do it. It's part of the job, but it just didn't work for him. So we figured out a workaround. Mm-hmm. Somehow he could give it to me in a different way. And I would, so we want to recognize where we can improve. And then other areas, if somebody is just the way they are, figure out a workaround, because we don't want to just sit there with a bad situation,
Correct. And, sometimes if we let someone have a workaround, we're allowing for everyone else to have that workaround. So
or they might have a different workaround.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Some people love forms, for example. So that's,
each case is on a case by case basis, and what we're looking for and what we're doing and how we can do that. And I agree with that too. But, sometimes like that approach can backfire if everybody isn't getting the same workaround. If I don't like Excel, so if in my job I just didn't want to produce Excel spreadsheets anymore, how would my leader feel about that?
Right. But again, it has to work for everybody. I'm just saying there's a lot of ways we can improve. There's some things that people, certain things about certain people might not change. It's going to go, wait a minute, how are we going to make this work?
Right.
That's what
But there are things that they could choose to change too. I mean, sometimes people they may not like to do it.
It might be, but again, certain things, for years, people,
Okay. So when we're measuring performance, like I tell everybody, what we do for one, we have to do for all, and what we can't do for one, we can't do for any. So your measurements need to be specific. There was an instance when it has to be fair. I'm treating everybody the same way. It has to be consistent year after year. I'm handling this the same way. It has to be clear. Are you this is a great thing when you're having a performance review and you're talking maybe about something that needs to be improved. Do you understand what I'm saying? Am I clear with my communication with you? Because I really do need for you to do this year in this kind of a way. Are there questions that you have with me about what I'm telling you? I want you to understand that this is what has to happen. Okay. And are they useful tips? Make sure that when we're giving employees measuring performance and useful tips, that they can use it, you can say, in your emails, I need you to be just a little clearer and do this. And this is why. Everybody wants to know the why, because our employees are it's a little vague. It's just like with Kirk, with those numbers, the part-time and full-time. I wasn't clear in my statement that it should have been on a year-to-year basis. He did a lump sum year, which didn't really help. So now he has to go back and do the work. I really wasn't clear, and it really wasn't useful to him. but coming from an HR reality, I just kind of assumed, which I should never do, that he knew that. So now, unfortunately, I have to make Kirk work a little more, which is unfortunate, but at least we'll get the job done. Evaluate fairly and honestly. What's your view of current performance? Not what happened a year ago, not what happened 3 weeks ago, not what happened yesterday, the whole year performance. Usually, sometimes people go back and they only evaluate what they can remember. So who can tell me what they had for dinner 3 weeks ago last Saturday?
Not me.
You don't have a kudos file or a file that you need to have. And if it wasn't a great thing, then you should have had the conversation 3 weeks ago last Saturday. Correct? We never wait until the review to throw everything in the kitchen sink that they're not doing well. We have those dialogues throughout the year. Remember last year I told you this. My supervisor waited 6 months to tell me something. He should have told me that 6 months ago. And I was more upset with him than thrilled with the review because he let me suffer. He let me under the illusion that I was doing the right thing. And that is not something that you want your employees to be taking away from this either. So how well are your goals being achieved? And what's the potential for development, eventual promotion? Now, I know we are a small company, but you're expanding in Europe and you're doing all kinds of crazy things. And you never know how big we could get in the next year and what new roles we could need. So never think that just because we are where we are today, that that's ever going to change, right? Because you never know. And if West does sell in several years, we want all of our employees to be where the people who buy us say, you guys did such a great job getting these people where they needed to be and right where the market will take them, that we're going to keep all of them. That would be a success. If we could get our employees so that if Wes ever sold, they would not say, well, we're going to let go this one, and this one. They're going to say, you know what? Yours are better than the ones we have. So we're going to keep yours. Right? Motivate in the right direction. Help employees maintain or improve performance, and raise the bar. Just because they're great at what they do, can you raise the bar just a little bit more to make them a little bit more effective? And then always, 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 our goal is to set people up for success. Our goal is never, ever to embarrass or to let them down, but our goal is always so that I know that hopefully everyone who comes close to me is better off than the way I found them, because I set them up for some professional success. Okay, so identifying performance gaps. So is it a performance gap, which means is it skills, knowledge, or aptitude? Are they new and they don't know they need the skill? Is it an unmet resource where they don't have some computer program that could help them do more? Or they need training like I would in Excel? Is it the changing priorities? Are we changing our priorities and we're not keeping them informed so they don't know they need to keep up because they don't know we've changed something? A performance gap is, does the employee know that there's a problem? Because just because we know that there's a problem, it doesn't mean that the employee knows that there's a problem, correct? And review and document ways to help close the gaps. If you have an employee who has a performance gap, have a dialogue. If you have an employee who has a performance gap and you have the dialogue, you might have to have another dialogue. And then you might have to put them on a PIP or something like that. But, if you don't have the conversations and they don't know, you're really not helping them and you're not helping your goals. Okay, so performance gap. There's a difference between performance gap and do they know? Here's the question you have to ask someone. It's a performance gap. Do they know there's a problem and they don't care? So that's the problem. Or they don't know there's a problem, so they don't know they need to care. And that's where we make the difference, because we always tell them when there's a problem. Because they don't know they need to care, then there's nothing that they know they need to do, so nothing is going to change. So do they know or do they not know? So that's a huge thing when it comes to performance gaps. Developing the, go ahead.
So really quickly, we're small, obviously, but as we continue to grow, at what point will we start contributing to each other's reviews? So like right now, I know it's kind of last minute, but at some point I would like to go to Mike or to Dave or to Ben and get information on the sales team. Hey, how is it working with this? And then vice versa. I would also like to give input on specific people that I work with. At what point should we be looking to do this?
I would think that this year would be a great starting point, because the bigger we become, the more intertwined, and we have the silo effect we have got to get rid of. And if you know that someone needs some help and maybe their leader doesn't or can't see it, you're obligated to tell that supervisor that this is what I see and this is what's happening. I would think that all of you would like to have a conversation with how we interact with people, just so you get a more well-rounded view of the employee and the work in general for everyone. I would think that, Tiffany, you would love that feedback. Ben, you would love that feedback. Jen, Laura, Pam, Wes, so that, we're not just doing our silo and here, I know they're at their computer and I know they're doing this and everything is fabulous. The sunflower effect. We're all good. We're all working. Everything is well. Well, sometimes if we're not having those dialogues, that isn't the case. So I would think that you should be scheduling some meetings with people that you kind of share or interact with your team. And it doesn't have to be an hour long. It could be a quick meeting with a couple of names and say, this is what I see. Tell me how you feel and how are we going to use this moving forward? And don't forget, there are 33 employees at Rare Patient Voice. There are 6 of you. If you guys are not collaborating with the success of the team, how does the team get successful?
Okay.
Correct?
That's correct.
Just an observation.
and of course, it's not just pointing out problems. Somebody could do a great job helping, and maybe their side doesn't know that they've been so helpful to the other group. That kind of
correct.
thing.
I'm not looking for problems. I'm looking for more kudos.
You want to get all the feedback.
Right. Right.
In all directions.
And here's another interesting thing. All the employees are looking to you guys for everything that you know and everything that you don't know. So if they can keep you siloed and you don't know something, how is that benefiting them? Or by the same token, like Wes just said, if they're doing outstanding work and being so helpful and so blah, 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 but somebody doesn't know, how is that encouraging them to take even more steps to be even more successful? Or maybe to say, hey, and speak up a little more and say, now that I know that this work is being looked at, this is what I think we should do better. The goal is always for improvement. The goal is never to be critical. The only reason to be critical is for the improvement. Mm-hmm. So include objectives for new learning opportunities. Challenged, and that's, I guess, what I'm doing for you this year. Challenge for even greater success this year. You guys could explode. Nobody knows. Nobody has a crystal ball. So if the more people, the more clients that we get, the more patients that we serve, the bigger we get, we need to be able to challenge for that greater success. And how are we going to do it bigger, better, faster, more? Isn't that the universe we live in? Although we don't live in an Amazon state and nothing happens overnight, but these times that we take to develop our employees will make the greatest difference in the world. Raise the bar not too far. Don't raise it up for them to fail, because if you raise the bar and then they fail at it, that can affect their self-esteem, their motivation, their desire to come to work, all kinds of things. So raise the bar the right amount. And of course, developing every single employee on the team moves the business forward. Okay, setting goals for your employees. The goals must be based on the job requirements, previous goals, company goals, and building on areas that need improvement. Remember I told you last year about the woman who hated the woman who wore pink, who had nothing to do with the job description, right? Mm-hmm. And they should be realistic, measurable, observable, challenging, and prioritized. If your employees come to you with 3 goals, which we say 1 to 3 is what we should succeed, because nobody can do more than 3 at a time usually, unless they're very minor goals and cleanup and maybe tactical goals. If you give them 1 to 3 goals and you don't prioritize them, what does that say to the employee? They all can't be equally as important sometimes, and depending on the time demand or the space demand or everything. So if you say, like when I talk to Victorine every day, I say, this is what I want you to work on first. This is what I want you to work on second. And this is what I want you to work on third. And she loves it because she knows her expectation. And every time she does that, she feels successful. And that is my goal, to make her feel successful. SMART goals: specific, measurable, aligned, realistic, and timely. Since we're going to do this in January, I'll kind of skip over this, but the goals that they set for last year, timely. I mean, some goals, do they expire in 2022 because they're going to be irrelevant because something's changed in our industry in 2023? I don't know. So, or like with HR, sometimes we try to do something and the law comes down and all of a sudden it isn't a goal anymore because one of the state or federal laws says, well, we're not going to do that anymore. So, SMART goals, again, specific, measurable, alignable, assignable, and assignable. Are you aligning them with the right person when you assign them? Realistic and time-based. And some goals, don't forget, when your employees come to you with some goals shouldn't take a year. Some goals, they should come to you and say, you know what, in 3 months, I think I should be able to finish this goal. And then I'm going to come up with the next goal, or then I'll start focusing on that goal. Some goals should take 6 months. Does it take a year to do some of the things that we're doing, or are we using the calendar year as saying, as long as we get them done in the 12 months? That's where you come in as the leader who should know these things and say, that's a great goal, but when do you think you're going to get that done? Because I don't think that should be taking a whole year. So some of this really does depend on you. Oh, I didn't change the consistently exceeds and the needs improvement. I changed it on the other slides, but I didn't because your sheet is different. So consistently exceeds is exceptional and needs improvement is marginal. So those are the rankings. And then of course you have meets in the middle, needs improvement and then marginal. Only because needs improvement means that I know that you can improve, and marginal means that you've been hanging out here for a while and I don't understand what you're doing with your time. So we need to have another dialogue about that. Okay. So the exceptional employee, I know that we have employees that have been here for a long time. But if you give people exceptional ratings, what do they need to do to be exceptional next year? Consistently do what they're doing again. So when you're thinking about the exceptional employee, let them know where the organization is going. The organization is growing. You knew that. You know that. We're going to be hiring more people. You're valuable to us, number 2. And let them know that we want to keep you. I don't want you to go anywhere. Can we do anything? Is there anything I need that we need to do to get you where you need to be? Are you happy with where you are? Do you feel like you're outgrowing us? Because that could be something that we need to discuss, because I don't want you to go because you're an exceptional employee. The goal of the exceptional employee is to have a great dialogue and to retain them. I always say that the exceptional employee, and nobody should get 5s on everything, because not everybody can be exceptional all the time. But the goal with my philosophy is, and so is Quint Studer, is, and he worked in healthcare a long time. He says your goal should be to do the exceptional employees first, and then the exceeds expectations, the meets them below, and the marginal last. Because the exceptional employees, they'll put you in the right frame of mind to do the next one and the next one, and they're easier because you're not they're not as problematic. So they're building your confidence as you're going along, and it's sending a message to the lower performing, the two that we don't really want to keep or we need to motivate up or out, that we're doing them last because they're last. And they're going to question why. Why am I the last? Because you're the one that needs the most work. And I should have been all year. I've been telling you this. And now that we're here again, I don't know a different way to explain to you what I need anymore. Correct? The exceeds expectation. Again, all of these are the same. Let them know where the organization and go and reinforce their value. Provide learning opportunities. If there exceeds already, we want to keep them, but we should provide them with experience, education, exposure. Maybe that experience is you let them cross-train with someone else on another team so that there's more collaboration, so that maybe those jobs can get there better, easier, faster. Recognize and reward, and of course, retain. The meets expectation employees, again, those are like, your stable 80. They're the ones that come in, they do the job. They really aren't looking for anything more in their position, but we need to make sure that they know that they're valuable to us, because not everybody can be a star performer. But by the same token, we need to provide them learning opportunities, because maybe they don't know what's out there and what they can be doing next. Encourage and support. And these people, we need to keep building confidence and interest in the organization, because the meets expectations employees, some of them, if they could get another job, at least in my experience in some of my industries I work with, they'll leave you for a quarter, even though they're a meets expectation employee. So keeping and building the confidence and interest, and maybe giving them a couple of little side projects to gain their knowledge base would be a great thing to do, and retain them.
Leanne,
Yes.
just a point on that, meets expectations. A lot of times when people are fairly new in the position, and Ben, you remember this from a few years ago, we had some PMs that were fairly new, and that was, we had to explain, you're just learning your job. Meeting expectations is good when you're doing it. So some of the folks that are fairly new, there's nothing wrong with that. People are used to getting all A's in school, say, no, if you were exceptional after only a few months on the job,
right,
we'd have to put, we need another new job for you. So right, there's nothing wrong with that with the new folks, and it gives them room to grow. Obviously, it's always great to do it, and then hey, they really learn their job and start excelling and start doing other things. So right, it's often a spot where some of the newer people might fit. So
my very first year with Genesis Healthcare, I had my first review with my boss, and I was at meets expectations, but he said to me, Leanne, you're right where I wanted you to be.
Yeah.
I didn't expect you to be up here, and I didn't expect you to be here. When I hired you, this is right where I wanted you to be that first couple of months that you were here, which is awesome. You're meeting, and then with your new hires and you're doing this, what you can say to them too is, find out did the marketing meet the packaging with the job? Because if we're going to expand and hire more schedulers or more PM assistants, find out with them what we were expecting. Did we meet your expectations too? Because that one that's important as well. So, the newer hires, we really want to be, I guess, a little bit less based on some of the performance, because we've had so little bit of a time to evaluate the performance. But if you let them know that they're right where you thought they would be at the end of the 90, the 120, the whatever days, it really does encourage them to keep seeking more stuff. All right. And then the needs improvement employee, have the conversation. Super simple. Be pleasant, be polite, watch what you say, but say what you mean. Set the expectation. This is what I expect from you moving forward. Find out, and when you're having the dialogue, find out what they need from you to help them succeed. When you're having a needs improvement employee, you need to really say, now, these are the expectations. What can I do to help you to succeed in these areas? Is there anything that I can do or provide? Do we meet once a week? Do we want to do something different? Tell me what you need from me. That way, if they do succeed, hopefully you participated. But if they don't succeed, you gave them that olive branch for you to help them, and either they took it or they didn't. And then what you need to do with a needs improvement employee is you need to coach them up or out. Like I told you before, They can drag you around that mulberry bush as long as you'll let them, because that's the goal in a needs improvement employee. They're really not all in, but they really don't want to be all out. So what are we going to do to coach them up or out? Because those are the three choices. Once you get a needs improvement employee, is they improve, which is what we want. We don't hire people to fire people, or they deselect because all of a sudden the job isn't what they thought, or they thought that they could bamboozle you just a little longer to get through another year, or we deselect them because they didn't improve and we've got all of our documents in a row and we did what we thought was necessary. You didn't improve, so we are letting you go. The marginal employee. This is the one where you're not really sure why they're here, but they're still here. And you're having that conversation. You're setting that expectation. You're finding out what they need from you to help them succeed. And you coach them up or out. And maybe you put them on a personal improvement plan and they have a limited time frame to get what they need done, or they will be out. If they've been dragging you along for months and months and months, and every time you have a dialogue, then something changes the next day and you're not getting what you need, and you're spending 80% of your time on this one employee instead of all the group and growing what you need to be doing, you really have to decide, is this person really going to make it? Have the conversation, set the expectation, find out what they need from you to get them to succeed, and put them on an iPad. Okay? Options with the needs improvement employee is to successfully develop or dismiss. Those are your options. Those are your only options. There is not a third option. And what we have learned, that the reluctance to address low performers and subpar performers keeps an organization from being its best. And it keeps their team, and it keeps their coworkers, and it keeps everybody from being their best. Because are we letting them give us excuses? Are we letting them, just because there's so much work, you avoid them or whatever? But if we do not address the low performers or the subpar performers, everybody on this panel suffers in one way or another. And if it's in Jennifer's level, then Pam's work is still suffering. If it's at Ben's work, then, Q1 or whoever. You see, there's a correlation. It just goes up the chain. And then you complete the appraisal. And these are all very important questions. Are their personal feelings clouding your judgment? Well, they're a really good person. They just have a couple of problems, but I really like to work with them. So what am I going to do? Or I really don't like them, but I don't know why they're still on my team, but here they are another year. Are your personal feelings clouding your judgment? Is the evaluation based on feelings about one episode that happened 6 months ago that puts you in a bad light and you haven't recovered from that yet? Right? Is it judgmental or unclear? The pink thing. That's all I can ever say. The pink thing. And there are always common rating areas. And I know that we're all leaders in a group and we want all of our people to be happy and productive and love being here and love doing what we do and love our patients and everything like that. But when we're doing the reviews, are we suffering because they're like me, they get a better rating? Or is it positive lenience? Well, the rest of the team is doing okay, so the whole team must be doing okay. Or is it the whole team is kind of so the whole team is going to be not so great because they're not doing what I say and I don't understand what's happening? The halo or horn effect. The halo effect can be kind of like, you remind me of my sister who I love, so I must love you too. Or you remind me of my ex-wife and I hate her. Right? I swear. I had a guy who was my boss, and I reminded him of his ex-wife, and she hated him. And my next job I was interviewing for, the owner actually came up to me after the interview, and he says, "You remind me of a friend I have in Florida." I'm like, "Did you like her?" Because I couldn't take that halo or horn effect again. The recency effect, you did such great work for me 6 weeks ago that I'm just going to give you a glowing reference, even though I'm going to ignore those 3 things you did throughout the year that we didn't have that discussion about. We talked about the sunflower effect. We're all good. We're looking to the sun. We're smiling. We're productive. We're fabulous over here. Don't worry about us over here. The compare and contrast effect, which is sort of like the halo and horn effect. I can, like, if you ever had siblings, well, your brother never does that. Why do you have to do that? Right? Or your brother always does that. Why can't you be more like him? So think about that. And then central tendency, which means I don't want to rock the boat. I'm happy with my boat. So we're just going to give everybody a great review and move on with our day. Okay. Prepare for the meeting. I can't encourage you enough to prepare thoroughly. Schedule sufficient time, an hour. Good productive communication takes time. I always allow 15 minutes before and 15 minutes after. Like before this meeting today, 15 minutes before, I had everything set up and I just, I cleared my head. I got rid of anything that I was thinking about so I could focus on what I'm talking about with you right this second. And then 15 minutes after the meeting, I like to decompress and think about what I could have done different or better or how it went. And don't squeeze these meetings between an important meeting with a new client and an old client who isn't happy. One's going to make you grumpy and one's going to make you happy, because those feelings also can intermingle in your meetings. This doesn't really apply to you, but keep an employee-focused environment. Clear your desk. Don't be looking up and down at your computer. And what you should do is when you start the meeting, say, if I look away, I'm taking notes. I'm not doing anything else. My complete and entire attention is going to be focused on you, whether you like it or not, for about the next hour. And be respectful of the employee, because if the review doesn't go well, the next time we have a review, what are they going to be expecting? Designate someone to handle them for you. Wes, if you're having a review of Pam, I would put my phone on mute. I would say to everybody, put your out of office thing in and don't be distracted, because if you get a call, what are you telling Pam about her review? Well, it's kind of important, but this is more. Right? And remain objective. The employee could come up with something that you hadn't even thought about. So during this meeting, you must always be objective and take the time to listen, because they could really tell you something that could really change the outcome of the meeting. And and sometimes it changes it for such a great way that unless you remain objective, you might miss it. There's this old movie with Tony Randall in it. And this gentleman has a proposal and the boss was so cool. He says, I'd like to run something past you. And he says, well, my heart and my mind are always open. So that's what you want your employees to feel like when they come to you. You'll listen objectively. They might not get what they want, but they know that if they come to you, you'll take the time to listen and to talk and to follow up and maybe do some things different. Hold on. Having trouble here changing my screen. What's going on? Oh, okay. Have the meeting. Use constructive feedback. Identify any issues. Get them out of the way. I mean, if you let the issue remain, guess what? The issue remains. Give specifics. I coach people all the time. And an easy one, I'm just going to say this, is if you're late. If they're late all the time, run a report and say, these is when you're late. Black and white doesn't lie. Or say, pull out last year's review and say, we discussed this last year. I have in my notes that we discussed this in August. Give specifics. On this day, I observed this. And hopefully, if we're having a great thing with an employee, doesn't have to be bad. Just like what's the Pam with the spotlight thing. That's a shared observation that we're doing the changing what we're doing, and it's observed and it's not hunches. So I observed you. I saw this. Use facts, not opinion. You can't say, I feel like. This is what the data shows. Listen to the employee. This is a two-way conversation. If it's a one-way conversation and they don't speak up, why is that? Are they afraid to speak up? Do they don't feel like you trust them? They trust you enough to speak up? You rushed through it and you didn't give them time to speak up. If they aren't interacting with you, that's a completely separate issue. Ensure the employee understands you will hold them accountable. If this doesn't if this doesn't improve, I will be meeting with you again in 3 months. I will be meeting with you again in 3 days. I will be meeting with you again in 30 days. And guess what? If you say that and you don't show up, what happens? They're never going to take anything you say seriously again, are they? Because you didn't show up to the meeting that you said you were going to have with them. Responding thoughtfully and don't just react. Sometimes I've been in a review and it's like, I just really want to say something, but I have to really think about my words because I want them to thoroughly understand what is happening and not just taking my reaction and running with that so that they can call another employee and say, well, I was having my review and all of a sudden, blah, 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 and she blew up at me. That's the only thing they're going to remember. And you and the employee are evaluating job performance. You are not judging the person. And respect the employee and preserve their dignity. Don't be going out and saying, oh, well, I gave this person this review and blah, 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 because that isn't going to work either. I don't know why. Okay. I'm having trouble moving the slides. Okay. Gain a clear understanding. Does the employee see themselves within how does the employee see themselves within the organization? Discuss and summarize accomplishments, strengths, areas, especially for the newer employees who have been here maybe a little more than a year, maybe less than a year. And because we're not in an office space, how do they see themselves within the organization? How do you see them within the organization? Right? This is especially important for the newer employees. Discuss accomplishments, strengths, areas of improvement, goals, and any professional development that they might seek. And if there will be a follow-up, when that is. After you have the review, give the employee sufficient time to review the review and think and comment about the appraisal. Some of the things you might tell them, they might have given themselves a 5 and here you give them a 3 and they're having a little trouble with that. They might need to walk away and say, I have to think about this for a minute. That's cool. That's fine. They don't have to sign the review right then, but you should give them a timeline of when they have to have that signed review back to you. Because like we say, if it isn't signed, you can't prove that it happened.
Is that 3 days or a week or?
I would give them just a couple of days because the farther you get out from the review, the harder it's going to be to get back to the review.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean? So like I said, I don't know what's going on here. Hold on. Disagreements happen. If you can't resolve a disagreement or the meeting gets heated, the leader is the one who is supposed to, breathe, agree to stop the meeting, maybe tell the employee that the two of you need some help and get someone else involved and get someone else to arbitrate. So disagreements happen. Don't ever think that every single review is ever going to be fabulous because some of them are not going to be. So if it comes to the point where it has to end, say, you know what? We're going to stop this here. We're both going to regroup. We're going to figure out something else, and I will get back to you with a plan.
Well, and then hopefully there's not a lot where this happens, but that's where we can draw on Leanne too. So there's an independent person with like HR experience.
Yes.
That can be involved if it's, and or whoever your supervisor, whoever we need to put in there, but that's a whole nother resource we have.
Right. And don't ever think that you need to bend them to your will or they're going to bend you to their will. Once it starts to get just a little argumentative, you might say, you know what, we've been here for a while. Why don't we take a break and we can meet up again in a little while. I'll schedule another time for us to do this. Keep your cool. They love pushing buttons. The hazards of the review process, judging things that are not job related, hiding behind the form. I've worked at companies where people will say, well, corporate made me give you this review. This isn't really what I said. Expecting miracles. If you have a needs improvement employee, nothing's really going to be different. And expecting a miracle, you expect a process to happen and not the miracle. You put a process in place to have them improve. But miracles, if we had miracles, we'd do bigger and better things with them. Don't make promises in the review that you can't keep. If you continue this in 6 months, I'll give you a raise. Well, you probably have to run that by Wes first. Discussing salaries with others. I'm sure that they do it, but you can't. and comparing one employee to another. I have no trouble over here with Susie, but Joe over here, I can't get to do anything right. So I don't understand what the problem is. Okay, so the performance review cycle, we have an ongoing dialogue. We have goal alignment and expectation setting. We have ongoing dialogue. We have final assessment, feedback, and rewards. Our goal is to motivate and engage employees throughout this cycle and throughout the entire 365 days that are associated with this cycle. So, and they, of course, then again, you get to do it again next year. So this is just, I consider these reviews like a garden. Well, you only have one shot a year to get your garden exactly the way you want it. You get to make modifications through the year, but planting season is planting season, and what you plant grows. So if you think about this as your one shot to really make some changes, to help people, to encourage people, to motivate people, to get them up or out, and then the rest of the year you're tending to the garden, it can be a lot more fun and a lot more. Next year should be even easier than this year, which should have been easier than last year. How's that?
All right.
Okay.
I have a closing comment, if you will. From my point of view, we're coming from a very good spot. I mean, obviously, you have individual employees, and some may be better than others, et cetera. But from my point of view, each department has done wonderful things. So we're coming from positives. There's going to be a lot more positives you're going to tell people negatives. I'm just looking at the pictures here, like Pam, all the new clients we've gained and all the work that we've done there and our expansion. Ben, the PMs have found so many ways to be more efficient this year and have done so much work. Jennifer with, taking over with Debbie, was such a figure there, and the team hasn't lost a beat, and so much has been done, and so many referral partners, and so many and it's great. We have numbers on all that stuff. So much work there. Laura, got it. Everywhere we go, people know about us because we're getting out there. We got the awards. I could go on and on. Tiffany, record-breaking months. All these proposals. People, the hamster wheel keeps turning. So I mean, I'm looking at hearing good things. That doesn't mean take the opportunity. People need improvement. There's always going to be that. But this is not like, oh my God, the company's terrible. You better beat everybody up. I'm seeing great things. So that should make this more fun than if it were the other way around. Okay.
So what I'm going to do is all of the job descriptions for the people who report to the people on this call, I'm going to send to all of you. Okay.
Okay.
So that you can have a better understanding of what everybody's team does. Do we want to share that with then the rest of the team so that people appreciate what everybody does? Because sometimes we sit in our corner and they're like, I do all of this work and I have no idea what they do, but I hear these things on the numbers call. So I don't know what we want to do there, but I'll send them to all of you guys because the job descriptions are like a piece of a puzzle that makes the company more. The more the puzzle is filled in, the more that the foundation is laid, the better off the organization is.
I think you can put them in the HR folder, and if people want to look at them, they're welcome to. I don't think there's any secrets here about, who's responsible for what and what they're supposed to be doing. And that also, just for argument's sake, let's say somebody wanted to move into a different division. Mm-hmm. They could look at, what do they do in that role, and what would, do I meet those criteria? So it gives them the opportunity, especially as we grow, in case they wanted to move, from one spot to another, they understand what the totality of the job is, rather than maybe what they just think it is.
Right. How does everybody else feel about that? Good. And I'll be sending your job descriptions. I've sent them all to each of you. You have approved them, except for Wes. He doesn't need one. He's El Presidente.
I just do all the things that slip through the cracks and nobody else gets to.
So, and then you guys can see, how many how many irons you have in the fire and what you do and how you need to direct things like that too. So that could make you guys more collaborative. Oh, you know what? I'm new and I didn't understand what was really going on over here. And that could be a real epiphany moment for several. So does that sound okay?
Fantastic.
All right. Anybody have any questions? All right. Have a fabulous rest of your day. I have some stuff to get out to you, and I hope to hear from you, getting some feedback about the reviews and things like that. And if you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate.
All right.
Thank you, Leanne.
Have a great day.
All right. See you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.